Hello friends, welcome to today's video where I'm going to go over some grammar basics. This is continuing on with my earlier video that goes over the parts of speech. This is a companion to that where I'm going to break out the different parts of speech and we're going to go over them in a little more detail. I know that sometimes teaching grammar can be really difficult when you're working with your children, or even sometimes just for yourself trying to figure out what does everything mean and why are there different types of pronouns and different types of nouns and different types of verbs. So hopefully this will help solve some of those problems for you today and you will have a basic, better understanding of grammar. So today I'm just going to focus on nouns, pronouns, and verbs, and I will do subsequent videos that go over adverbs, adjectives, those types of things. So nouns are your subjects and your objects of sentences. And nouns refer to person, place, thing, or idea. So we have singular nouns, we have plural nouns, we have common nouns, and we have proper nouns. So singular and plural, those are pretty common and easy to maneuver and figure out. So are you talking about one thing or are you talking about many things? Common nouns are not specific. And then proper nouns, they are specific, and those are always going to be capitalized. So if you're wondering how to punctuate your pronoun or your nouns, right? That if they're a proper noun, you're going to capitalize those. So we also have compound nouns, collective nouns, concrete nouns, and abstract nouns. And at this point, you are probably thinking, oh my goodness, too many nouns. So compound nouns, if you think back or if you are kind of going through this for the first time, those are where we have two separate nouns and we're going to stick them together. So separately, they have no meaning, but when we put them together, now they're going to have meaning. So an example would be like butter and fly. Two separate words, right? But when we put them together, we now have a butterfly. So there's a ton of different types of compound nouns. These are typically taught to early elementary because as they're learning basic words, they can start figuring out to put them together and that you have compound. So we also have collective nouns, and those are referring to an entire group or unit. You often see these in science, right, when you're studying different classes of animals. We also have concrete nouns. So these relate to things that you can touch, you can see them, your five senses are in play. Maybe you smell it. Abstract nouns are those things that you can't determine with your senses. So this leads more into the ideas. So freedom, sadness, anxiety, we can't touch those, and so those are abstract nouns. Next, we have pronouns. So pronouns are important to study as you're studying nouns because pronouns are the words that take the place of nouns. We substitute with them in our writing. And so that really helps your writing from becoming sort of boring, right? If I were writing about George Washington and every single sentence I say his name, it becomes monotonous and dry. So we want to encourage our students, and as we're writing, we want to also make sure that we are sprinkling in some of those pronouns to help break it up and have it flow better. The one important thing, though, is that we also need to talk about antecedents. So the pronoun antecedent is the noun that the pronoun is replacing. So, for example, Ruth loves to run. She runs every day. She is referring to Ruth. And so it's really important that your pronouns and your antecedents match. So sometimes working with students, right, they may write a sentence, Sally and I went to the store. She laughed the entire time. My pronoun doesn't match my antecedent. So I either need to say that Sally laughed the whole time or we laughed the whole time. So we want to make sure that our pronouns match our antecedents in number, and we're going to go into a little more detail with those. So we have personal pronouns. So these are the ones that we're most common with, familiar with. So these are referring to someone or something that is either doing the speaking, being spoken to, or spoken about. And these come in first, second, and third person. And depending on what your writing task is, this is a really important thing to emphasize with your students. So typically when we're writing very academic papers, we're going to write in third person. So we don't want them to say you or I. Those would be first and second person pronouns. We want third person for that academic voice. But maybe we're writing something more personal. So I want to make sure that they're using plenty of first person pronouns to emphasize that particular narration style. You is very rarely used as a particular long piece in writing. It can be done, but it's very difficult because you're integrating the reader into what you're writing, and sometimes that can fall really flat or go the wrong way. So, not something that's typically used, but can be done occasionally. Next, we have reflexive and intensive pronouns. And these are pronouns that have self or selves added. So on the screen, you can see what first person, second person, and third person would look like. These refer to the subject of a sentence and function as the object of the sentence. So, for example, in a reflexive pronoun, we let ourselves relax for a job well done. So, this is referring to the subject of the sentence. Intensive pronouns put an emphasis on the antecedent. They have no actual function grammatically other than to give emphasis. So, Sam put his shoes on himself or by himself. You could do that. But the intensive pronoun, it's really just intensifying the subject. All right, we have demonstrative, interrogative, and indefinite pronouns. And these are also very similar to types of sentences. And so we'll talk about those a little bit later, but those all connect different types of sentences. So demonstrative pronouns, this is this, these, that, those are referring to a very specific noun that it's going to talk about. The interrogative those are the ones that are going to ask questions. So think about interrogating. When you're interrogating someone or something, you're going to ask a lot of questions. And so interrogative pronouns do that. The goal is that they are used is to ask a question either directly or indirectly. And then indefinite pronouns, kind of like how they sound, they're not referring to a specific noun, person, place, thing, idea. So we don't know, right? And so you need the context, and can be really important in your writing to make sure that your reader knows exactly what you're talking about. All right. Lastly, we have relative pronouns. So relative pronouns introduce a subordinate clause. That, which, who, whom, whose. So this relates to the main clause and it's offering additional information. So for the example, Robin Hood stole money from men who had great wealth. Robin Hood stole money from men. Well, Robin Hood stole money is our main clause, right? That's the main sentence, right? And then we're learning that he stole money from men. But what about these men? My subordinate clause here gives me more information about the men that he stole money from. So subordinate clauses also have subjects and verbs. So that's one of the things I'll do in more detail in another video. But it's important for students to realize that phrases and clauses are different. Phrases do not have subjects and verbs within them, but a clause does have a subject and a verb. All right, verbs, these are often referred to as the predicate. So if you're doing the simple predicate or the complete predicate, same with simple subject, complete subject, which relates back to the noun. This can be kind of confusing for students when it's saying the predicate and them not making that connection that the predicate is actually the verb. So verbs express action. You can actually have a complete sentence with just a verb. For example, I could say, stop. That would be a complete sentence, all right? We have an understood subject, you, that I'm telling you to stop, okay? So verbs, you can have a sentence with just a verb, but no other part of speech can do that. So verbs, we have different types of verbs. We have our main verbs, our helping verbs. We also have linking verbs. So our main verb here as an example would be reading. I am reading a new book. Am is a helping verb. I am reading a new book. Linking verbs are going to connect the subject to additional words that identify or describe the subject. So Mrs. Book is the teacher of the year. I'm connecting the subject of the sentence to a modifier, identifier about her, letting you know that she is the teacher of the year. Now, there's a ton of linking verbs, so that'll be something you can look up and get a handy little chart from and keep that kind of posted nearby if your student needs help with that as they're working through practice. But different linking verbs would be like am, is, are, was, were. those sorts of things. Sometimes in writing, your students will, I generally do this later in high school, but we start to remove and try to enhance their writing by removing to be verbs. And so it's important that they know what those are in order to make sure that they're not using them, because we're trying to enhance their writing and getting them to think more critically about their word choice. All right, next we have transitive and intransitive verbs. So transitive verbs have an object that is receiving the action. So Sally scored a goal. What did she score? A goal. Sally gave June a book. What did Sally give? She gave a book. Some students here would be like, she gave June. And it's kind of funny. We always laugh, but it's like, no, we don't give people. And so you want to think about what is the direct object, what is receiving the action. So what was given was the book. To whom was it given? That's June. Intransitive verbs do not have an object that receives any action. So, for example, the enemy attacked. I marked the wrong word there, but the word is attacked, right? We have our subject. What did they do? They attacked. We studied for an hour. We did what? We studied. For an hour is a prepositional phrase. Those will come in another video. So you can see that there's no object receiving the action in these sentences. Again, the enemy attacked. Attacked is the verb. I'm not sure why I marked the wrong one, but it happens. Overall, understanding the mechanics of grammar is really important for your student or for you to become a better writer. Also, it can help you learn a new language. Sometimes my students are learning Spanish at the same time, and it's really fun for them to finally make connections between subjects and verbs and direct objects and prepositions as they're learning that new language. So when they have the foundation and they understand what certain words are referring to in grammar, it can make learning a new language more fun. It can make it easier. And additionally, as they're working on their English skills and developing their own language and complexity, they can become stronger and better writers, able to communicate their points more clearly. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. Feel free to check out my website. If you would like more information about different resources that I have available, you'll just have to look down below in the description. And again, I will produce a few more videos coming up on the other parts of speech, so I look forward to getting those out to you soon.